So it's centaurs again. We're doing centaurs.
Okay.
I'm just gonna go up and bring up my lovely assistant, Miss Paint.
Oh, okay.
Miss Paint.
MS Paint.
Everybody, say hello to Miss Paint.
Hi, Miss Paint.
So if a centaur
It's
was a giraffe, would it look like this? Doing this with the trackpad.
Okay, I'm impressed
like
so
this,
far.
with like the big body, right?
Okay.
Let's do so big tall body, right?
Big tall body.
Would it be more like or would it be more like okay, like this, right? Where you have like the regular body, right? But then like then a human, like the neck, like a giraffe neck, and then a human head on top. Like giraffe, so you'd go like, so it would go like giraffe, human, giraffe, human.
I think right? That personally.
Or are we going more like giraffe, big long human?
Okay. Big. You cut out there for a second.
So it's been keeping me up at night.
I saw Wallace Shawn die. Wallace Shawn is dead.
You're a jabroni.
Quiet! Hello. Can you hear us?
Yep. I can hear you. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. I didn't know if our audio had cut out because I thought it did there for a second. But gang's all here.
Well, no juice.
Well I meant the audio of yes, but no juice tonight. Sad. Are you doing your juice impression for everyone tonight, Bill?
Well, he didn't give me descriptions, but all right, everybody.
It's a terrible juice impression.
So I went to Buffalo Wild Wings, and
you have to do more like no, yeah.
No,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was on my scooter.
No.
No.
But tonight we are going to be actually having a topic for the first time in quite a while.
Who are we?
Going back to a classic top fives episode, we've never done. We've done movies and TV shows before. We really haven't delved too deep into music. So tonight we're gonna go over our top 5 albums.
Tonight we steal Rob Fishbeck's shtick, is what we're saying.
Yeah, Rob Fishbeck.
Cousin Rob. I think maybe just talking music. We'll just summon him somehow. But yes, we are talking musica. The deacons put a couple of self-imposed rules on ourselves. AJ, obviously, you didn't have to follow these rules, but we decided we didn't want any of the same artists in our top 5. So even if there was an artist that we liked multiple of their albums and potentially could make our top 5, we were not going to put the same artist in the top 5. And also, personally, for me, to make this easier and also to give us more content in the future, I decided no scores and soundtracks because it was just too hard with scores and soundtracks to potentially, possibly, and we can always do. Yeah, that's true. I think that is how it works.
Springsteen.
We can always do an episode in the future, top 5 favorite scores, favorite soundtracks, stuff like that. So I elected to leave those out of my bobber.
I also elected to not do any compilation albums or greatest hits.
Yeah, no greatest hits either, because I don't know, I just felt like it was cheating.
Yeah, I all of mine fit that criteria. So Like I thought about some compilations, like the first Eagles' greatest hits was like really close up there. But yeah, I ended up it's all original release, all different artists. So all right, I don't know if we're gonna have any overlap, which is kind of interesting. I don't think we're gonna have to punt tonight.
I think it's very.
Yeah, let's do the first episode where we don't have to punt.
It's very, very open ended because all of us, like, while there is crossover, I think all four of us. Yes, true.
No, Matthew, but like the video.
All four of us, though, like our core of what we listen to is different. So that's while we all do have some similarities in some of the artists that we like, but I think our core style of music is different for every one of us. So I don't think there will be any overlap, which is fun because and that's the other thing tonight. You get to learn a little bit more about us and maybe possibly learn about an artist you should check out. So yeah.
And people start, everybody in the chat keep talking about music. Bring up your favorites. Let's all have a great big conversation together. So should we kick it off?
So let's start with Juice.
Are we going to do? Should we do his? Are we going to do like we all do our number 5?
Yes.
We all.
Yeah.
When would we like to do honorable mentions?
Right
Start with
one.
it or right before one?
Right before one.
Like a top 10 countdown would be on TV?
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds like a plan to me.
So let's just do everyone's 5 first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So start with Juice's 5.
So Juice's number 5 is Billie Eilish. When we all fall asleep, where do we go?
We like Billie, except for when she kind of started getting weird about Taylor Swift. But other than that, we see you, Billie. We like you.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the best album she's got, in my opinion. It's like,
it's a quality album. I like starting off strong, I think. Starting off strong. Would you like to go next? Right. We obviously don't have him here to really weigh on why he likes that album so much.
All right. So my number 5 is a band who existed for a while before they put this particular album out. Was never the biggest fan of them. And a bunch of my friends were like, have you heard the album I'm about to mention? I'm like, why would I listen to that? Is this the same band that put out The Burning Red? Is this the same band that got heavily deep into the new metal, rap metal scene when they started as a regular metal band? And like, you need to check out this album. So I did. And it is one of my all-time favorite albums. It is from a band from the Bay Area by the name of Machine Head. The name of the album is The Blackening. If you are a heavy metal fan, this is as close to a seamless heavy album as you're going to find. There's not even the worst track on it, which is Slanderous, is not terrible, but it has some of the best constructed songs I've ever heard, including their magnum opus, which is Halo. Machine Head became, because of that album, I went and gave their earlier stuff. The new metal stuff I still never really liked. I grew to really respect their first 2 albums, which were not the same genre. Machine Head's been notorious for kind of, at least early in their career, kind of jumping on trends, and they were bouncing back and forth. And then they decided, screw it, we're going to make like a traditional metal album. And it's one of the greatest albums I've ever heard. Really made me respect them. And if you are somebody who is big into guitar solos, if you are somebody who is big into melody and a lot of layers in terms of your music, this is a phenomenal album for that.
We're done. I can't say I'm familiar with it, but it sounds good.
What's your 5?
My number 5, let me consult my list to make sure I didn't change this in the last minute of panic, but I'm pretty sure I remember what I put down. There was a lot of shuffling, y'all. Things were... Okay, no. Yes, I remember. It is what I thought it was. It is Hot Fuss by the Killers, which I think is just an absolutely phenomenal album. AJ's looking. Are we gonna punt? Are we good?
No, we have the exact same number 5.
Twinsies. Okay, you can jump in on this with me then. The year is 2004. I'm coming into my own as like someone who's like kind of getting their own musical taste, and I think that Hot Fuss is literally like an album that made me who I am today. Like I just like that like they were doing. I always say they kind of brought back that kind of like 80s vibe before it was cool. No one else was doing it at that time. Now obviously it's like very prevalent in pop music and kind of pop punk music and whatever. But when the Killers came out, like no one was doing it like them. Like that album, there's truly all bops, no skips, swear to God, like from start to finish. Like I was looking at it again today and I was like, fuck me, this is such a good album. Like
that was kind of my thing too, is like I revisited this and was like, it was one that was always up there for me, especially when I was younger. I was like, oh, I forgot how much this music hits me in the soul. All the Things That I've Done is one of my favorite songs
of all
ever.
Time. Yes,
Smile Like You Mean It. I forgot Smile Like You Mean It existed, and that song was like something that healed my heart. And yeah, just everything on there. Andy, You're a Star.
Andy, You're a Star. Andy, You're a Star gets slept on. That is such a great song. Like this entire album, like truly, I was like, no, there's not a single song I skip over when I listen to this album. Like it is. I'm just gonna again quickly pull up the track list, but y'all don't even understand. This album literally starts with the banger that is Jenny Was a Friend of Mine. What a great mother effing introduction. Then you go to
that
Mr. Breeze, which people are like still bopping to this day. I can't believe this album is 20 years old. Wild to me. Smile Like You Mean It. Somebody Told Me, which was like their first single off it. Again, all these things that I've done. I'm always a track 5 girly. Andy, You're a Star. On Top, which is probably one of the not the fave of the album, but still a good song. Change Your Mind. Believe Me, Natalie. Believe Me, Natalie is also slept on. Yes. Midnight Show. Everything Will Be All Right. And then Glamorous Indie Rock and Roll comes in at 12 songs, 50 minutes. It'll change your life. God, that album is so good. So good. I can't. That is perfect that we both had that as our number 5.
I actually
that is fantastic.
Chime in on this for a sec too. I'm not a huge Killers fan by any stretch. However, right when this came out, I went to a radio festival. It was in DC. It was the HFS Christmas Nutcracker or whatever they called it back then. I went primarily to see Velvet Revolver, who was the headliner. And the lineup, like when I tell you this lineup, you're going to be like, holy shit. Like several of these bands blew the hell up. But the Killers were in the middle of the bill. They were like smack in the middle. And I remember them because they stuck out because they really didn't. There was nobody else on the bill who really sounded like them. But I just remember like listening to their sound because it was in an arena. I'm like, well, this is arena music. Like not every band who was there at the time, because like I said, I'm going to tell you this lineup. And you're like, what the fuck when I tell you what this lineup was? But they were at the time already portraying themselves as somebody who belonged in that arena. And that was when this album first came out. But the lineup for this show opener was Keane.
Wow.
The second band was My Chemical Romance. Third band was Breaking Benjamin. Fourth band was Chevelle. Fifth band was The Killers. Sixth band was Franz Ferdinand.
Jeez.
Sixth band was Jimmy Eat World. Seventh band was Good Charlotte. And the headliner was Velvet Revolver.
Velvet Revolver is the one that sticks out like a thumb to me, like that lineup. Like,
talking about Hot Fuss made me hot. Apparently, I had to change. I was cold, and then I got warm.
But it just goes to show, like, for that whole lineup I've read, 5 of those wound up becoming like legitimate arena headliners.
I go to that concert stadium today.
Yeah.
And they would charge me a lot of money to see it in Las Vegas and call it When You Were Young or When We Were Young.
And but what I was saying though is like of all of them, the 2 that stood out to me, like of the bands, because that really isn't necessarily all my style of music, but the 2 that really stuck out to me were The Killers and Jimmy Eat World were the 2 that I was like, these two bands belong in this environment.
Jimmy Eat World might be an honorable mention.
Yeah. And just one little note on it too, just because it's directly applicable. I was between this and What's the Story Morning Glory at the 5 spot, right? For Oasis. And I'm like, in many ways, Hot Fuss is that album with the hindsight, like the benefits from the hindsight of that album already existing. If that makes sense.
That's fair.
So
all right, so let's snake it. AJ, give us your 4.
4 from me. We're gonna stay with some glamorous indie rock and roll. We're gonna go a little bit classic. We're gonna go with the Violent Femmes self-titled album.
Good.
I had a hunch that was going to show up on your list.
That's a good choice.
Just like a really formative band for me that, I think that everybody should discover the Violent Femmes in their early 20s. But I mean, Gone Daddy Gone, great track. Add It Up. If you that was the quintessential screaming to a song with my friends in a car song when in my 20s. So like just great stuff. The Violent Femmes themselves, I mean, are such a cool story. But Blister in the Sun. Blister in the Sun's another one. That's a great
Add It Up was a big karaoke song when I was just out of college.
Yeah, dude. It's party rock for hipster trash, and that's who I am.
Party rock for hipster trash. Violent Femmes, you need a t-shirt.
Put that on a t-shirt. Put it on a hat. I'd wear it.
If you play guitar and you haven't had a friend play some pickle bucket drums to do a Violent Femmes cover, who are you?
Who even are you?
Yeah. So yeah, that's just getting out some more, just like I said, glamorous indie rock and roll. It's so funny, like the first time that I show people the Violent Femmes who just never were familiar with their music, like you show somebody Add It Up that's never heard it, and they're like, is this Cage the Elephant? Like it stands the test of time. It's kind of cool. So
right on. All right, Bethany, you are enough for number 4.
Okay, I pulled up this album on my thing because I just want to read you all the track list, because I shit you not, this could be a greatest hits album, but it's not. Like, it's just an album. Okay. Of course, I'm talking about Tom Petty's Full Moon Fever. Let me just list off the tracks on this fucking album, y'all. You start with Free Fallin', I Won't Back Down, Love is a Long Road, A Face in the Crowd, Running Down a Dream, Feel a Whole Lot Better, You're So Bad, Depending on You, The Apartment Song, All Right for Now, A Mind with a Heart of Its Own, and then it ends with Zombie Zoo. Literally, like 7 of these 12 songs are on every greatest hit compilation that Tom Petty has, because like you read these songs and it just sounds like it's a greatest hit album. The other reason that this album is one of my all-time faves is because at the end of Running Down a Dream, you have to listen to the part where he's like, all right, in fairness, all right, CD listeners, in fairness to those listening to on cassette or vinyl, we're going to pause for a few seconds so they can change to track 2 or side 2. All right, here's side 2. And to this day, when you listen to it like on Apple Music, that's still what you have to hear. And it's fantastic. It just pleases me so much every time I listen to that song that I have to hear him explain that we're pausing for a moment for the cassette and vinyl listeners. So thank you for that, Tom Petty. But also just a great fucking album. I don't need to tell you all why Tom Petty is good. Like it's a given, obviously. But I was just like, I was thinking the other day and I was like, I feel like probably a Tom Petty album would be in my top 5, but like, let me see, just because of like what his music means to like, you know, my family and whatnot. And so I was going through it and I was looking at this album and I was like, this is the greatest hits album. Like this literally is the greatest hits album. Like this is insane that all of those songs came from one album. That is crazy.
Oh, and Tom Petty to me is like somebody I always think of as like good music, but a few hits, and then you just start listing them, and they keep going. Yeah, it's like, oh no, he
really was
how
prolific.
many hits he had? Yeah.
So many. That is, I feel like that's some person you can go up to someone and be like Tom Petty, and they'd be like, who? But then you started listing off his songs, they'd be like, I know that. Like people don't realize how many songs they like know of his work. Like it's crazy.
Yes, it's just an iceberg. I think that's something I'm going to try to describe as like an iceberg of a hit maker. It's like you always just think of the first few and then you keep going.
Yeah, there's a lot more than I think people realize for sure. Also, there's a mug out there, and it's like a pie chart, and it says things Tom Petty doesn't want you to do because of how many times it's like "don't" is mentioned in his titles, and it's the funniest mug to me, and I don't know how I don't own it because every time I think about that mug, I laugh, and I was like, "This is a great fucking mug." But anyways, you're number 4, Boo.
So I toyed back and forth for 4 and 3, and I've came down to it for a specific reason why I'm going to go with this one at 4. If you're ever at a point that you're feeling one of two things, like either really, really down on yourself or you're really trying to pump yourself up, there is no better album than Perseverance by Hatebreed, which right now I feel like is something that a lot of people could really, really benefit by listening to let out aggression in a positive way and have an uplifting message after everything we've just been through in the past couple of weeks.
Are you mad at me?
So I can just outright say that this album was one of the more important ones. It wasn't the album that got me into Hatebreed because their first album I really do like. Satisfaction is the Death of Desire. An amazing album. But they came into their own on the second album, which is Perseverance. And it has their biggest anthem, which is I Will Be Heard. And it has the song Perseverance. And it has Proven. And all of these songs, people hear the name Hatebreed. If they're not familiar with Hatebreed, they're like, these are songs about, probably just extremely violent things. And no, they're not. It is a motivational speech disguised in hardcore music. And
who has not listened to I Will Be Heard like on the way to talk to their boss?
Yeah. It's a prime example right there. If you've never heard the album and you want to let out some positive aggression, I highly recommend checking out Perseverance by Hatebreed and listen to the lyrics because you can understand Jamie the way Jamie's like he screams, but he's very understandable. It's not an inaudible kind of scream. You can understand because he enunciates pretty well. Mm-hmm. And if you just need to let out some aggression in a most positive way, listen to that album.
It's also like just mention that it's approachable.
Yeah,
like that's one that I've listened to. Like getting friends into harder music as like a screamo kid, like
it's
Devil Wears
gateway
Prada
album.
And stuff. Yeah,
it's 100% a gateway album.
Yep. So,
all right, so I gotta give
Juice.
Juice is 4 and 3.
So
yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
Get stuck on my scooter.
Scooter.
My number 4 is Yngwie Malmsteen with Fire and Ice. Fire and Ice, Yngwie Malmsteen. Yeah.
I can't say I'm familiar. I'm only familiar because he has shown us the cover art of this before.
That's a guitar, very, very guitar heavy. He plays a million notes a minute, so he's. I can tell with some of the next ones. The next one's a pretty well known one. Juice's number 3 is Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. So
backwards and forwards. He likes it both ways.
Yeah, and listening to it with The Wizard of Oz. It's just the way that it works.
It's a great list so far because it's got like it starts off slow and then it's got some rise into that Yngwie Malmsteen and then we're going a little bit more mellow.
Yeah,
like I like the journey that Juice is putting us on right now.
Juice is a stoner who doesn't smoke weed.
Yeah,
that's basically Juice's vibe.
Yeah,
it's like the straight edge guy that you're like, really?
Yeah.
100%. Love that, homie.
All right, so number 3 of every album that I'm going to list today, this is, and I mentioned this on a previous stream before, there is no album in hard rock, metal, new metal, whatever you want to call it, that is sequenced better than this album. It is something that if you see this band live and you hear a song and the next song on the album, you're expecting it to just start immediately afterwards because it's just the way this was so perfectly put together. It is a wildly frenetic album that is all over the place and stood the test of time in an era when a lot of music did not hold up very well. This album still to this day, you cannot put on a rock radio station and hear at least 2 or 3 of these songs multiple times a day. The album is called Toxicity by System of a Down. And this was, again, this is weird that I'm going with so many sophomore albums, but their second album.
He loves a sophomore album.
They went into a gear that I didn't know existed, period. I mean, I bought that album the day it came out. I had their first album, and I liked the first album a lot, and I still do. But if you listen to that first album and then listen to that second album, you're like, oh my Lord, like this band grew so much as musicians, as songwriters, as lyricists. The whole album flows.
Oh, I think I lost your audio, guys. Mid-sentence, I think we did. Yep, I think I'm pulling up just the track list on Toxicity because it's just insane. I was just listening to a great interview actually from one of the producers on the album. I think it was someone with Ruben in their name, but on Chop Suey about how dangerous that track was and how he'd never heard anything like it, but he likes producing unique music because the music doesn't hit or it's the biggest thing in the world. But we're still no audio on the Deacons on my part. That's what I'm just kind of talking through, guys. So talking about Mike's favorite music. I mean, Aerials is another one. Just insane track. It's just me. It's just me now. Oh no. Oh no. I'm scared. So you guys have any good jokes? Just 2 people watching live right now.
Vamp.
We're back. We're back.
Can you hear us?
Yep, you're back. You're all the way back.
I hope you vamped beautifully. I'm sure you did. You're nice.
I just asked Chad if they have any good jokes.
Oh, nice.
William, any good jokes?
But just to say, to put a little bow on the album. The album starts with a single note in Prison Song. It literally just goes dun and then stops for 3 seconds, and your attention is immediately grabbed, and you have no idea what the journey. If you've never heard the album, you ain't predicting what's coming at any given point next. However, once you've listened to it twice, you're like, oh, it has to be that next. If that makes sense, when you first are just
have a good flow.
Yeah, when you discover it, you're like, what the hell am I listening to? And then upon second and third and subsequent listens, you're like, this all fits together. Bizarrely.
I can't remember the name of the producer that I just watched the interview with. He was a
Rick
producer.
Rubin. You were right.
It was Rick Rubin?
Yeah.
He did. Just awesome interview with him that he did just recently. Talking about just what that music meant. It's so cool.
All right, B, you are for number 3.
That's interesting. We're talking about sophomore albums because I actually picked a sophomore album for my next pick.
Jesus Christ! If this happens again,
no, it won't. I don't know what you're thinking of, but I don't think anyone has this on their list. They should because it's a great album. This is where the rubber hit the road for me on the top 3. Not, the whole thing was difficult, but the rubber really hit the road on the top 3 because the problem with my top 3 is, again, I wanted to pick a different artist for each thing, but my top 3 artists and my top 3 albums, I could pick anything in their discography and it could be my favorite. So to narrow down which one of their albums would make it to my top 5 was very difficult. And this one, I thought I knew what I was going to say. I thought it might be the debut album. And then I was like, oh, the third album, whatever. And then I sat there and I thought about it. And I thought, when I am seeing this artist live, what songs do I look forward to most? Like, what am I always excited to see? What do I never want him to remove from the set list? And it is songs from Multiply, which is Ed Sheeran's sophomore album, the green one with the X on it. And I think it just like holds a special place in my heart because the Multiply tour is the first time I got to see him live. I didn't get to see him when he was with Plus. He was mostly doing opening acts. He opened for Taylor during that album. Kind of did like smaller shows, and he didn't start doing arenas, like bigger shows, until Multiply. So it was on Multiply that I got to see him on tour for the first time. That's where I fell in love with the way he performs live, and why I'm excited that he's finally releasing a live album after all these years. Bloodstream Live, which is a song on Multiply. I literally, the first time I ever listened to the song was kind of like, yeah, okay, it's fine. Then I saw it live, and it is one of my all-time favorite songs now. My all-time favorite Ed Sheeran song is on this album, which is Photograph. I think it's got like a perfect mix of his like singer-songwriter roots where he came from on Plus, and where he's kind of like gone back to, like on Variations, and even to a certain extent on Subtract. But it also has some like fun pop hits. You've got your sings and your don'ts and stuff like that. He does a little bit of what he likes to do is mix a little bit of like kind of, he says he's not a rapper, he's a singer with a flow, but it's kind of like rappy bits on Take It Back. I just think, again, any Ed Sheeran album could make my top 5 because he's one of my favorite artists. But if I really had to sit there, when I really sat down and boiled it down, I was like, what do I look forward to most seeing live? And it's songs from Multiply. So for that reason, Multiply. Also, I See Fire is such a like boss song, and it's freaking fantastic live. And the shitty Hobbit movies did not deserve that song. That song is too good for the quality of those shitty movies. And I'm glad that he did include it on his actual studio album and not just as part of the soundtrack. Because that song deserves better. But yes, okay, that is all.
I was so worried when you mentioned sophomore albums. And then, like, as soon as you mentioned when you see him live, I was like, okay, it isn't actually the same one. Because my third favorite album of all time is Back to Black from Amy Winehouse.
Yes, which is so appropriate considering what your summer box office was.
Why I was so mad at that movie, and I still haven't seen it. It's like it was one of the first albums I ever got on vinyl, and it's one of my must-listen vinyl records. I mean, everybody knows Rehab, everybody knows Back to Black, but like tracks like That I'm No Good is just jazzy and soulful, and I'm just going through these tracks. Love Is a Losing Game. Just I love. Just it's a sink into your couch album. It's meditative. It's rich. It's everything that her voice is that made it unique. Accompanied with like. So just like that soulful kind of jazzy tone. Oh man, Amy Winehouse, you were too good for us.
Truth.
Yeah. So.
And she said no, no, no.
What a hell of a way to open up an album.
Yeah, honestly.
Just the beat of that song.
We did not deserve, and she did not deserve the treatment that she got while she was on this earthly plains. Pour one out for Amy.
All right. So we are going to move on to number 2.
Number 2, the honorable mentions on our number 1 album of all time.
So AJ, start us off with your number 2.
So my number 2 album, we're staying in the sad stuff. My first one is going to be my number 1 is much more upbeat. It's the All at Once album from Airborne Toxic Event. Pulling it up just real quick here. I like having that track listing. Once he started doing it, I was like, I'm addicted to doing that, so I don't have to do it all from memory. Because there's 10 to 12 songs in all these albums.
Yeah, it's hard to remember every single one and in what order they come in.
But this album came out. I mean, it's not necessarily when it came out. It's more like when it kind of hit big was right when I was going through the worst breakup in my life, and stuff like changing was just like a good angry song to process with that, and even just like the the Graveyard by the House is one of the best like just sad songs ever. Good wallowing music, but All I Ever Wanted is the big song, the big hit for Airborne Toxic Event. It was like the one like that really incorporated their strings and was like a big radio single 8 years ago. So I don't know if anybody remembers them. It's one of those bands that I think was a household name for about a year. They even played like the Disney concert, like Radio Hall. Good like throaty, deep vocals, like a bass, like a bass vocalist that did punk music, and then they started doing stuff that was more melodic and haunting, and all at once.
Melodic and haunting.
Phenomenal album, and Changing. I think most people know that one from one of the stoner comedies with Seth Rogen and James Franco. I think it was in the Pineapple Express soundtrack. I'm not 100% though. Yeah, so something of that ilk.
Something of that ilk.
Yeah, some modern take on 70s punk. Like it's kind of,
I want to see if I know this song. So their biggest song was All I Wanted.
All I Ever Wanted.
All I Ever Wanted. I feel like I have to know this, right?
You're gonna, or Sometime Around Midnight. All I Ever Wanted was a bonus track, and then Sometime Around Midnight was on their next album.
Sorry, and it's not that one. It just started playing. Why is it not coming up?
I've got a signed poster from them in that closet there that I could dig out if I really wanted to.
That's very boy.
This is one of the coolest gifts a friend ever got me because I couldn't make it to their show. So
why am I not finding theirs? Oh, here they are. This one?
Yes. And they did do one of the coolest things ever with Changing, just as another one of their bigger hits. In that when they did the Disney Radio Music Hall show, they walked in with a marching band while playing a breakup song.
Badass, honestly. They walked so Taylor Swift could run.
The layer of pettiness. Like,
listen, I think a marching band brings a certain gravitas to anything. I think marching band should be involved in more shit, to be honest.
And favorite male vocalist of all time, it's the lead singer of Airborne Toxic Event. So second, my number one is my number one. So,
ooh, suspense.
Yes.
He's building anticipation.
We'll get back to it.
We'll put a pin in that. Okay. I went back and forth on what should be my number 2 and my number 1, but I finally decided. And this is another one where this band is my favorite band of all time. And any of their albums could have been my number 1. Also, their favorite song is not technically on an album, so that's kind of a whole nother thing. But nonetheless, so I was stuck between a few different albums because this is, I think, arguably what many consider one of the greatest bands of all time. Of course, I'm talking about the Beatles. And so you could choose between any album and you're not going to be wrong. Obviously, Sgt. Pepper gets a lot of love, rightfully so, because like the whole theme album, and it was iconic and it was trippy and it was weird and experimental. Obviously, you have things like the White Album and things like Abbey Road. Like people are still mimicking that for a reason because that album and that album cover is so iconic. Obviously, Let It Be being the last one. You could go obviously earlier to the kind of the more popular stuff. I think my sweet spot, I like a lot of the popular stuff. I like a lot of the more experimental stuff. But my favorite like era of Beatles is when we're in between, where we're kind of still doing both. That is fair, William. Again, there is no wrong answers. So I always tend to gravitate towards something like Rubber Soul because I literally wrote a whole effing paper on it once for a music class. I'm obsessed with that album. I love that album. I thought for sure that was going to be my answer. But then obviously Revolver obviously always gets a lot of love because of the iconic things that they did in the recording studio for that album and the album that it became. And then also for me, Help is a big one. And I think those three albums, like that specific time in the Beatles history, is probably my favorite. They're on the cusp of like getting into, ayahuasca and doing weird stuff, going off and doing vision quests, but they're not like fully there yet. They're like still kind of whatever. And then I went ahead and I looked at the track listings. Literally, I looked at them yesterday. I looked at them today. I kept going back and forth. I rewrote my answer like 5 times. And I was like, of course, it's going to be Rubber Soul. I wrote a paper on Rubber Soul. Rubber Soul is like, oh my God, it's iconic, whatever. And then, of course, I didn't pick that because I was so set that it was going to be Rubber Soul. But then I really looked at the track listings and I have to go with Help. If I actually really sit there and think about it and think of all the songs that are on Help and think of the vibe of Help, and it's just that era of the Beatles. I just love they're in that transition period. And I love that there's, kind of some more, the most covered song of all time is on that album. For goodness sakes, Yesterday is on that album. I love that you have, kind of crazier tracks, but you also have, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna pull, since we're doing the pull it up thing, I'm gonna pull up the, one of my favorite songs that isn't Hey Jude, which again, it's not technically on any Beatles album. Is I've Just Seen a Face, which is on Help. I think it's such a simple song. Again, it's kind of more of their like love song, whatever. It's one of my effing favorite Beatles songs. I love that song so much. Okay, so you start off with Help, which again, freaking iconic. Also, I love when people cover it and make it slow and sad because it should be, because it's literally a cry for help. Then you go with The Night Before, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. It's a great fucking song. I Need You, Another Girl, You're Going to Lose That Girl, Ticket to Ride. It's just fucking fun. Act Naturally, It's Only Love, You Like Me Too Much, Tell Me What You See, I've Just Seen a Face, Yesterday, and Dizzy Miss Lizzie. So yeah, I think again, you can't go wrong. It's the Beatles. No matter what album you choose, everything has like a really great reason behind it. But yeah, when I sat there and I really started looking at track listings and I realized like how many of those songs I would never dare skip over, I was like, oh, okay, I think this is the one. So that is my answer.
Yes.
I've Just Seen a Face is a fucking phenomenal song, and anyone who thinks different can fight me. Iconic.
Yeah. It's iconic. You can use the word iconic when you're talking about the Beatles.
The Beatles. It's a fair expression. Yeah.
By the way, the first cat they ever had was named Jude because of that song. But did you know that I had a beta fish and I named him Mr. Kite?
I like that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, just fun Beatles fact.
That's him with a fun Beatles fact.
All right.
I named my hammer Maxwell. No, I'm just kidding. My hammers sadly don't have names. Maybe they should. Hit him with the facts.
So again, this is one I think anybody who's heard me talk about music before is not going to be surprised whatsoever that this album is as high as it is because of its personal importance to myself. Again, this is the very first album I ever purchased with my own money. And I now own it on vinyl. I have seen them play it live in its entirety. It is an album that had 5 radio singles, was not released by a major record label. It is still to this day.
You and Ed Sheeran have been common.
Yeah. It's smashed by The Offspring, which is some people will point out to Americana, as some people like that better. Smash has this still the raw punk energy, not quite as polished as they would get, a little bit later. They're at the point that I like a lot of bands at, where they are on the verge of becoming something massive, but they still have that little like fire in their belly that they're, still fighting upwards. that is Smash in a nutshell. That album has Bad Habits on it. It's got Nitro Youth Energy. It's got the song Smash, which literally when I was in high school and was, had a lot of trouble identifying like with everybody in the school. Like I didn't really have a group that I felt like I belonged in. That song was one that always was like, well, I'm not a trendy asshole. Do what I want, do what I feel like. That was like kind of like my own little personal anthem, my personal little fuck you to everybody who were, didn't like me because I was the weird kid who wore black shirts and jeans every day and was kind of quiet and to himself. But the album, it's special to me for so many reasons. They are, to this day, one of the most important bands for me because I almost, even though they had a couple of albums before that, which a lot of people are not really familiar with, they have a self-titled album and they also have another album called Ignition, which are not super well known. Smash is what,
but the remix was. That's a bit of a terrible reference. Sorry, carry on.
This was the first one that really brought them into the spotlight, and it was the first band that I got into at the time and kind of followed their musical journey as they went along. So like I was on board. This is when I first really started getting into hard rock and metal and things like that. Obviously this being punk, but Offspring's always had a very heavy guitar sense to them. So they also are in a weird way a gateway band to metal, even though they're punk, just the way that they play. And that album really was so influential in my musical journey. And it just for so many reasons is appropriately, number 2. It would have been number 1. I will explain why it's not shortly.
Y'all are great at building suspense. Juices?
All right, so we got Juices 2 and 1. I don't have a list of...
You have to be like looking off to the side because you're like fiddling around to find the perfect response. And then you're like, so B-dubs.
Yeah, no, I was...
By the way, there was a new B-dub sketch on SNL this past weekend that I will never not think of Juice every time he mentions B-dubs with it now. It's like all these football fans like at B-dubs on a Sunday. And like the Chiefs fans are all happy and the Lions fans are all happy. And the Patriots fan is an abusive asshole. Played by Bill Burr.
Of course. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Please check it out. It's so good.
Will do. So Juice is number 2. Stradivarius, Polaris.
I don't even think I can pronounce that. Stradivarius.
Are
we all familiar with the Stradivarius? Anyone?
I know of them. I can't say like I could point out their music by ear, but number 1, it doesn't surprise me for Juice. And Juice obviously is a big power metal fan. If anybody is unfamiliar with most of these that he has on here. Dream Theater, Black Clouds and Silver Linings, and Dream Theater being probably the quintessential power metal,
I'm more of a thrash girl myself.
But yeah, so we're going to do the
honorable mentions.
Go
ahead with your list.
First things first, I said I was not going to do greatest hits albums on there, but if I were to include it, Billy Joel's Greatest Hits Volumes 1 and 2, more so than 3, but 1 and 2 in particular, is primarily how I got into Billy Joel, because the vast majority of the music, obviously, I was either very young or predated me. So the compilation is really what made me the big Billy Joel fan. If I were to pick an album, it is going to be Stormfront, because again, that's the one that I grew up with. That came out when I was pretty young, and we didn't start the fire. In particular, when I was,
So they made you learn it in school.
Yeah, I think I was 4 when the album came out, either 4 or 5, and it's one of those deals that you hear a song like that's so catchy, and it's of all Billy Joel's albums. If I had to pick one, that would be the one that I would pick. I'm going to go rapid fire here. AC/DC Back in Black or Highway to Hell would both be in the conversation. Beastie Boys, License to Ill or Ill Communication. Either one of those two would be in this conversation. Leviathan by Mastodon would be number 6. If we were, well, 6 or 7. Lamb of God, it would be As the Palaces Burn. Again, for the reason I just said about The Offspring, it's the one where they are just about there. They still have the fire in their gut, but they haven't quite broken through yet, and it's the one that I like the best out of all of their albums. Slayer, Rain and Blood, 100%, or Seasons in the Abyss. Either one of those two would 100% qualify. Killswitch Engage, Alive or Just Breathing, 100% is my favorite one of theirs. I know a lot of people say End of Heartache, but I'm always an Alive or Just Breathing guy. And the last one I'm going to mention is, of course, it's Sea Shanties and Wet Panties by Coconut Pete.
Obviously. Classic. Does that count or not count?
With the half-court shot at the buzzer.
The last honorable mention is going to be Sea Shanties and Wet Panties. We love it.
Oh, one last one that I will mention that most people probably don't know of. It is called An Audio Guide to Everyday Atrocity by the band Nothing Face. I'm sure very little people on here probably have ever heard of that one, but that also is a massive, when I was discovering underground music, that one is a very important one to me. So yes.
Mike, one question though. Favorite Weird Al album?
Ooh.
Oh, it's Bad Hair Day.
Bad Hair Day?
Bad Hair Day, yeah. Fair question.
All right, my honorable mention, I'm going to start off with the Lesbians, as one always should. We're going to start off with Tegan and Sarah's The Con. If I ever need to be in my feelings, that's what I'm jamming to. The song 19 will always fuck me up. Obviously, our Midwest Princess, Chaperone, The Rise and Fall of Midwest Princess. I know it's recency bias, but goddamn, that's a good album.
That thing gets stuck in my head all the time.
So good.
And so damn good. So loved my Lesbians. Carrying on, then we're gonna get into I too was an emo teenage girl who grew up in the early aughts. We have such things as Jimmy Eat World's Futures, which almost beat out Hot Fuss, but I was like, no, Hot Fuss takes the cake, takes the edge. But Jimmy Eat World's Futures, that album is everything to me. I love it. The amount of times I've listened to that album from start to finish, cannot stress. Obviously, I had to do My Chemical Romance, The Black Parade. I listened to Welcome to the Black Parade a lot in the last week. No reason in particular, just, do or die, they'll never break me. But anyway, so we've been carrying on a lot lately. Great album. Getting into my more, I'm a moody, early, late teenage, early 20 something. Gotta give love to Sigh No More by Mumford & Sons. I played the hell out of that album when it came out. I would still play the hell out of the album. I often love that album. I'm going to Little Me. I have to do some love to Did I Shave My Legs for This by Dina Carter. I'm going to say this now and I'm going to stick by it forever. Dina Carter walked so Taylor Swift could run, and no one can convince me otherwise. Strawberry Wine, fucking fantastic song. Can't tell me it isn't. Self-titled debut by The Head and the Heart, Down in the Valley. That's all I'm going to say. I could bop to Down in the Valley all day, every day. Great song, great album. Fine Line by Harry Styles. I love all of his albums, but I think his sophomore album has probably been his strongest from start to finish, in my humble opinion. No Strings Attached by NSYNC. Come on, we were all NSYNC girly pops at one point, and if you're a Backstreet Boys fan, boo too. Just kidding, I also love them. Wide Open Spaces by The Chicks. Freaking love The Chicks. I love them even more since they dropped the problematic first part of their name. Riot by Paramore. Again, really any Paramore album could have made my honorable mentions, but Riot is the album that probably made me a fan. So it's great. Absolution by Muse is also another classic. Yeah, I'm excited for one.
We'll plug that.
And again, to reiterate, really any bit of the Beatles discography, Ed Sheeran's discography, or Taylor Swift's discography is obviously on heavy rotation in my life. And those have been my honorable mentions. Thank you, everyone, but mostly the Lesbians.
Oh. So, going on, you're ridiculous. I love you guys so much. Going on with rapid fires. The White Stripes, Get Behind Me, Satan, taught a young guitar-playing AJ that not all good music had to be guitar-driven. Great piano-driven album from the White Stripes. KG Elfman, Thank You, Happy Birthday. Metallica, my favorite Metallica album is Death Magnetic. Let's see here. Jimmy World Futures, also formative album for me. Rise Against Silence Sounds of Counterculture, first album I bought with money from a paycheck. Miseducation with Lauryn Hill, no explanation needed. Tommy Jones and the Chantels, Crimson and Clover, Dead Man's Bones. Dead Man's Bones is an important one. Do you guys know about Dead Man's Bones? I think I've talked about it on here.
Potentially?
It's an album that Ryan Gosling did where he plays piano and there's a drummer and a children's choir and it's all spooky Halloween music. Yeah.
We have seen some of this.
Yeah, like the kids are in their costumes, like doing like spooky Halloween music in the videos. It's fantastic. Justin Dolls, I'm a big Amanda Palmer fan. Their self-titled album, though, that was like angry girl punk is so cool. Cherry Glazer on the opposite end of that, Pop at Cremp. Such a cool song. There's just a melodic song about grilled cheese. It's just kind of beautiful. And I'll end that off with I painted myself into a corner here. Thursday War All the Time. If we're going super emo albums, the most emo album. I love Thursday. Like one of the things that I love right now is that Jacob Blunden and Taylor Blunden is like the biggest Thursday fan, goes to a bunch of their shows and posts on Twitter. I'm just like, oh, I need to go to these. So
on the list.
Yes.
Must do.
And I was cutting down.
AJ's number one.
My number one album of all time is Foxy Shazam, The Church of Rock and Roll.
That's a great album title, can I just say? The Church of Rock and Roll? Get the fuck out of here. That's great. That wins by default.
So the vocalist, I don't know how this wasn't the biggest thing in the world. He is he's the closest thing that somebody's been to being unique and being Freddie Mercury-esque.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. He was a carnival performer, so his shows were insane. Somebody was smoking in a venue when I was at one of his shows, right? And he pointed him out and was like, hey, put that shit out. Here, give it to me. He put a cigarette out on his tongue.
That's wild.
And then I'm talking hit Freddie Mercury notes.
Wow.
Like he has a Holy Touch is my favorite song on the album. It's one of my it's driving, it's fun. And he hits a note that's Mariah Carey-esque in this album. He hit that Mariah Carey-esque note after putting a cigarette.
Emancipation of Mimi, also a great album.
But It's Too Late Baby is amazing. Freedom, just so good. The Streets is just wallowing about what if I don't make it, and knowing that you guys don't know the name of this band, it gives another layer to that. Like it's that they didn't become the biggest thing in the world when they could have been. Like it puts a layer of melancholy on it there. That's just so cool. Welcome to the Church of Rock and Roll. I mean, title is like greatest album opening I think of all time. The song that everybody knows from this album is the chorus as the lead singer singing, "That's the biggest black ass I've ever seen," and I like it. I like it. It's 38 Special meets Queen meets the circus rock that we had with the later days of emo, like Black Parade era. Perfectly encapsulated into one beautiful package to create, I think, one of the best musical pieces of art in rock and roll.
I feel like you've kind of sold me. I'm not gonna lie. I gotta drive this weekend. New tunes.
Watch the music video for Holy Touch. It's insane.
All right, I'm intrigued. I like a circus performing. All right, AJ, we're gonna play a little game for my number one because I made Mike play this with me. I think we all know where my number one is going. Obviously, it's gonna be a Taylor Swift album, but the question is which Taylor Swift album. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a couple guesses. I don't expect you to probably know her discography off the top of your head. If you do, I'll be impressed. But I'll give you a second if you want to look up the list of her album titles, and I want you to guess what you think my all-time favorite is.
I have a weird recognition with them. It's like if I see it, I know what's on it.
Yeah.
But I don't know the names of them all off the top of my head.
Okay, computer. Yeah, there it is. Okay, computer.
I'm going to do I get 3 guesses?
You get 3 guesses. Yes, I think that's fair.
Do I have to say Taylor's version or not?
You do not have to say Taylor's version. You can just say an album title. I'll know that you mean Taylor's version in your heart because you would never listen to the stolen versions.
So I have my 3 rapid fire just off the top of my head.
Okay. I'm excited to see where this goes.
Is it Red?
Is it Red? No, but that's a really good guess because that is one of my favorites.
Is it 1989?
No, but that's also a really damn good guess. You are naming like my favorites.
Is it Reputation?
No. Mike guessed all of those 3 at first too, which is funny. Now, my favorite all-time song is on Red. So Red is a very good guess. Red was my favorite album for the longest time until this album came out a few years later. And it is, and this album does not get enough love, and I will stand for it to the day I die. It's Evermore. And I know what everyone's saying. It's just Folklore's little sister. It's the, less superior version. Folklore's better. Say whatever you want to say. Folklore is a great album. Again, I'd rather listen to Taylor Swift than just about anything. So I'm really okay with any of the albums. Just like the Beatles, it was very hard for me to choose. But when push comes to shove, because I am like a sad Taylor Swift girly pop, I like the emotional songs. Folklore and Evermore obviously have a special place in my heart, as well as TTPD. And I mean, all of the albums have a special place in my heart. But when push comes to shove, I couldn't give it to TTPD because recency bias. I need to sit on that for a little. She's not even 1 year old yet. Like, we can't be placing her at the tippy top yet. It's just too soon. It's the movie with Drew Barrymore. That's a good, actually, I do really love the movie Ever After. Yes. But Evermore, I have sat with now for a few years. It is still at the top for me. I love that album with every fiber of my being. My favorite time of year is like fall, winter, the burrs. I love the burrs. September to December is the best effing time of the year. Evermore gives that in an album. It also is part of the biggest troll that Mike ever pulled on Chance on Stream once. He was reading off tracks from this album because I have it on vinyl. It's the first Taylor Swift album I bought on vinyl. I am absolutely obsessed with it. I think it is fantastic. There is a reason that she gets a 3-minute standing ovation every time she finishes off Champagne Problems, people. It's because Evermore is superior. It is a fan-fucking-tastic song. If you are a girly pop who loves Taylor Swift but loves then your feels Taylor Swift stuff, this is the album. I don't care what people say. This is the album, and I will love it forevermore.
I gotta say, like, Evermore, like, releasing was the first time I was working with a Swiftie the day that a Taylor Swift album dropped. Yes. And that's an experience.
It truly is. And it also like hit at such a time, like it was still like the pandemic days, but Folklore and Evermore, like really, like we needed those albums at that time. Also, there's a song on it called Marjorie, which I think is one of the most beautiful things she's ever written. It's about her grandma, her grandma was an operatic singer, and she literally overlays some of her operatic singing into the end of it. Like, that's how it plays out. It gets me every time. I cannot listen to that song when I'm driving because I cry every time I listen to it. The 2 times I've been very fortunate enough to see her perform it live, I cried both times, particularly in Sweden because I was jet lagged as hell and I hadn't slept, and I was just a puddle. And I'm like, no. And then thankfully she went to Witchy Vibes with Willow, and I was like, I could get out of it. But it's a beautiful song. Anyone who's like, she just reads about breakups, fuck you. Listen to Marjorie. It'll change your life. It's a great song. If you've ever, obviously lost someone near and dear to you, it's fantastic. Anyways, you, sir, you're number 1.
All right. So I will put a small caveat that this album, you all know it's coming. If I were to have done 2 by a individual artist, 1 and 2 would have been, so one of them that's not on the list that would have been had I not made my self-imposed rule to do that. Ride the Lightning would be my number 2 album if I had not made the rule to just do 1 by an artist. But obviously, Master of Puppets by Metallica is, without a doubt, hands down, the most important album in my musical journey through life. There's no, as much as the Offspring Smash means to me, Master of Puppets just was that on steroids, like amplified, on steroids, and then put to like the nth degree.
He wears his little Master of Puppets shirt every year on his birthday.
The shirt is older than some people in the chat, probably.
Okay.
So the story behind Master of Puppets, I'll make it as short and sweet as I can. When I was in junior high, I was helping out they were doing like a junior high stage show. And I actually, at the time, was on crutches because I had messed up my knee. So I was just helping them out like with the production side of things. So I was just doing backstage stuff, but I got to see that everybody do the rehearsals all the time. And I knew of Metallica. I knew of the Black Album songs, like everybody and their brother. If you grew up in that time frame, everybody knew Enter Sandman. Everybody knew Stand But True. Nothing Else Matters. Unforgiven. Wherever I may roam, And I liked them. Don't get me wrong. I very much enjoyed them, but it wasn't like something that hit me. And one of the bands at the show played Battery, and I'd never really heard at that point in my life something that was that speedy and aggressive. And one of the other guys on the stage crew was like, "Oh, you don't know this? Well, I have the album. I'm gonna let you borrow it." So he gives me the album, and I listened to it like 10 times over the weekend.
That's how you knew it was the 90s. People just let you borrow their CD because that's how you could listen to music.
And once I gave it back to him, I went and I bought the first copy of it I could find. I listened to that album without a doubt more than any other album in my entire life. I know that the track listing by heart. It's Battery, Master of Puppets, The Thing That Should Not Be, Welcome Home Sanitarium, Disposable Heroes, Leper Messiah, Orion, and Damage Incorporated. I didn't have to look that up. I can tell you that right off the top of my head.
A pretty short album.
Yeah. But it's only 8 songs. Yeah.
It's not in like length.
Yeah, because the shortest song on there is still over 5 minutes.
It's a Metallica album.
Well, I mean, they do have, as they went along, like the Black Album does have 12 songs. So, the longest song on the Black Album is only about 6.5 minutes. So, but just the impact that had, that is what turned me into a metalhead. Like, I went from somebody who listened to radio rock and kind of, just went along with a lot of stuff, grew up on classic rock. I some of the stuff that I mentioned earlier, obviously like the AC/DCs and things like that. I grew up on that. But it wasn't until I heard that I realized what style of music I liked. It's the album that molded me into who I am today from a musical's perspective.
Like that show, The Movies That Made Us.
Mm-hmm.
It's the music that made you. Oh, little baby metalhead. Don't get off.
That's I love that the communal aspect of music is a part of your story.
Yes, I love that someone shared their album and that's what turned you onto it. Also, I'd like to say to all the haters that used to make fun of me in high school and was all like, "Oh, Taylor Swift's a flash in the pan, and like my cool music is gonna outlast you." Oh, who's laughing now, bitches? Because I'm a woman in her 30s, and guess who still go to Taylor Swift concerts? Suck on that. I think it's time.
And I was just going to point out one thing. AJ mentioned the community and like community aspect of music, and he witnessed this firsthand when we went and saw Metallica together. We were at MetLife Stadium, and I've seen Metallica 33 times. And how many times as we were walking around that stadium did I stop because it was somebody I had seen the previous show?
It was like you were in a pub.
He's the mayor of Metallica, actually. He's like, "Hello, people. Are we gonna know people at our concert?"
Maybe.
Cute. I love it.
Yeah, it's so insane, and that's one of my favorite things. Like, if you're watching this, and you're like me, and you kind of quit listening to music in your car, even, and you start listening to like podcasts or somebody I know streaming.
If I'm being honest,
I have like a method when I'm on my way to work, I have to listen to music because I need to get like pumped up. But when I'm on my way back from work, it's going to be a little more trafficy, you know, because it's rush hour and I'm like done with the day and I don't need to be pumped anymore. That is when I pop on a podcast. So I'm very like half and half in like my daily commute. And then same thing with like driving on long road trips. Like sometimes I need a break from one or the other. I'm like, I need to like listen to music for a little bit. Oh, actually now that's kind of making me sleepy. I need to listen to this people's conversation for a little bit. And I'm kind of like switching back and forth. Yeah.
I need to know the yards per route run leaders in the NFL, you know, so I get that information usually on my drive.
Fair enough.
I just prepping for this show, I was listening to music on my way back and forth from work every day. Instead, I've got a half-hour commute roughly on average. Guys, if you've taken a break from music, get music back in your life.
Back in music.
Now, but
truly.
To totally counteract that, speaking of podcasts, next week you're going to get a double dose of us. We'll be on our normal What the Show time next Wednesday. I believe this will drop next Tuesday. We have not yet recorded it, but I believe it'll drop next Tuesday. All of What the Show will be appearing on the Extra Movie Butter podcast next week with JTE, Moose, and Benny. They've invited us because they figured that Red One is the absolute perfect What the Show movie for us to go onto their show to discuss. So we will be on. You'll get a lot of us next week. So the Extra Movie Butter podcast, which you can get on all streaming platforms, we will be on that next week with our good friends. So yeah, definitely. Look forward to that. And next week, who knows what kind of nonsense we're going to get into here.
Oh, shit. I forgot about the Weather Vanes album from Freelance Wales. It's going to take me another 15, 20 minutes.
I saw Wallace Shawn die. Wallace Shawn is dead.
It's 2 minutes for roping. You're a jabroni.
And then there's like the Pixies. I mean, where is my mind?